from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Matt Leta. He's the CEO and founder of FutureWorks. Matt, thank you very much for being here with me today on the show. I really appreciate that. The way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So, I will leave the stage for you. But just as a hint to or teaser to the audience, we're going to talk really about cool stuff, including future of work, indeed, and AI and the age of AI. And maybe some of you might be familiar with Matt. He did something, last year, I think. We're going to talk about, but without further ado, Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for having me, Mehmet. For a quick intro, well, I'm originally from Poland, left when I was 18 to study multimedia. At the time, I wanted to be an interactive artist. I wanted to create art that interacts with people. And I did, but I needed some money, so I went started working in marketing a bit. I had a kind of like a brief career in marketing for a few months, where I managed to save up quite a bit of money. Started creating art. Then I started making websites, and when I was about like 20 years old, I connected it all and built my first startup, which was a platform for artists where they would come together, share what they create. And that was in the UK. And since then, I've lived in Spain and Chile and many places, Ireland. And eventually, sort of later in my 20s, we raised a few $1 million and moved to California. And I eventually ended up exiting the startup, went traveling the world. And as I did that, I created a kind of like a digital product studio company that would help Silicon Valley companies with innovation, with digital products. And that went really well. I had that company for about 8 years. It was doubling every single year, and on average. And so that led me to kind of start seeking what the future may hold and trying to navigate problems of the future. And so I created sort of a community around that called Future Horizon, with a series of gatherings and a bunch of initiatives. We helped create a number of nonprofits and fund them. And with the future thought meant we've been very close and working quite a lot with AI companies since sort of 2017. So quite a while now. And eventually, a couple of years ago, we realized that we can now actually use generative AI to help us deliver work. And so I created FutureWorks, which was an experiment at first. It was just an experiment to see if I can co-create a company with AI as my partner. That was in early 2023. And from there, it has grown to like a multi-million-dollar company that still operates with like kind of AI at its core. It's much more complex, much more advanced than it was then, much more custom, but it's still there. And as we did that, I noticed that it is not so easy to get true ROI from AI. And that's from our internal hurdles and from work with clients. And that's sort of primarily our kind of mid-sized US companies, but also a bunch of enterprise. And I noticed that, there is more to it than tech. And so I started really diving deep into the subject over the last sort of 2-3 years, interviewing a lot of people, reading a lot of material, doing, programs at Harvard Business School and so on, just to kind of to really understand how can we truly drive change for businesses and ourselves using AI. And so that became subject of my books. I think that I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I live by the technically on or within the Harvard campus.
Cool. And thank you again, Matt. I think people might remember and you know the Hustle GPT. So this is what you were referring to, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I remember, this became like everyone wanted to also kind of take the idea. So you mentioned something about the ROI. I want to, just start from there. What
Okay.
did you learn from that experiment? And now everyone's saying like, "Hey, your AI can be your co-founder. Like, go try, to let it do things with you, or like maybe like behind or beside." I would say, especially 2023, it was the beginning of the whole, generative AI and ChatGPT. But behind all what the lights and noise that were there, really I want to understand from you, can we really build businesses with AI, or is it just like a good place for, maybe giving you some ideas, maybe just it can act as a, mentor probably. What was like this experience like, and what's the biggest learning for you?
Yeah, we absolutely can build businesses with AI. And not only that, we can transform existing companies to have and become increasingly AI native or have like a digital core that uses quite a lot of AI to augment work um, and achieve much higher outcomes than it would be with the sort of default. Like most companies right now that have an AI mandate have some sort of internal systems, but generally, what happens is they have their employees use ChatGPT and Perplexity, and maybe they implement, few other tools that were pitched to them by one of the 5 billion AI startups. And so, and that doesn't really bring ROI. I mean, it does make our teams, our workforce, uh, uh, you know, faster to some degree and accomplish more. And I feel like many of those are mentioning, the gains that they're getting, but it's not going to be like a 2x or 10x, and definitely not 100x. It's more so like 20% or 5% sort of improvement on output from the team. And so um, it's important to think to go deeper than that, right? Like rather than have people just treat this as a sort of ongoing advisor or strategy helper, and especially if they're using something like ChatGPT or Claude, which today still love to hallucinate, right? And I think there is just not enough attention paid to it, and those systems are not necessarily ready for our teams to trust in as much as they do. And um, and so we sort of need kind of deeper solutions. We need to build the AI systems deeper into our workflow. Because if you have a scenario where people work, let's say they work based on tasks and documents, right? They handle, let's say emails, internal messaging, tasks, documents. If all of this information is live connected to intelligence, and that intelligence is sort of purpose fit to work with those people, help them learn, but also learns from them as they go, then that enables a much higher ROI, much higher augmentation. Then one person can suddenly start doing the work of two people and then five people and so on, right? That's impossible if they just were to use ChatGPT.
I was discussing this, with a friend the other day, and of
Yeah.
course with my guests as well. So, do you think like people, they think like the AI is that just a magic wand, and you just do like this, and all of a sudden, like, oh, you can get rid of all, the people maybe you have currently, so you can like do more work with less. Or maybe some people they think, yeah, I will give it to the AI and let them decide what they want to do. By the way, like the episode before this one, and I'm, of course we're
Yeah.
recording now and we're gonna, but I know the sequence of my episodes. So
Uh-huh.
my guest Saman yesterday, when I was recording with him, so he was mentioning that actually people sometimes exaggerate, what the AI can do. And actually he mentioned about like it's more about people should think about the automation use cases more than rather the AI as generative AI, because generative AI at the end of the day is just like, you give it instruction and it come back to you. So from your perspective, Matt, now I'm mentioning all this because I want to come to a point. With all this being said, and we are recording this on 15th of May, and I think this news came either this morning or yesterday that Microsoft are laying off like 6,000 people, which is like 3% of their workforces. So someone might argue and say, hey, but look, it's working. So that means, AI can replace completely people's job. What's your take on this? Like, is it like different from a giant like Microsoft versus maybe a startup with, I don't know, maybe we are only 20 people. So, and you have experience in both sides, I would say.
Yeah, I think firstly to address that point, you know, auto, automation is a good lens to look at it, because generally, if you look at incentives within the business, which is always to optimize, right? Always to increase margins so that you can outcompete and stay relevant in a market that constantly heads towards higher optimization, lower cost, and so on. That's just how the economy works, right? That's how capitalism works. And we we can safely think, and that's nothing new, that everything that can be automated will be automated, right? Period.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, unless there is legislation that somehow prevents it from happening, if we are in free markets, everything that can be automated will be automated because it's cheaper. And if the outcomes are comparable, then whatever is a more expensive way of getting some outcome is going to disappear, right? And that has happened many times in history with electricity came and all of that. And so now automation, intelligence is kind of automation, right? But you can put it in those frames and have workflows. A lot of the stuff that people call agents right now, they're not really agents. They're very narrow workflows that have some form of intelligence, like if this then that, and it writes something and comes back with some response, based on some inputs, right? It's not really an agent, but a lot of companies call them agents because it sounds better
Fancy.
for yeah. It's easier to sell this stuff, right? So there's a lot of hype and a lot of disappointment around agents, but true agents are also coming, and this is very important to understand that then intelligence is a bit different to automation because it can reason, it can decide, it can act on its own, it can choose its tools, and there's like a global network of tooling being developed with MCP and other approaches. And so tools are sort of opening themselves up to be used by those reasoning systems. And so to that degree, those systems are an automation in essence. It's not a person doing the work, it's a system doing the work. But the path to achieving an outcome is not predetermined. And I think that's quite important to observe and get ready for. So I wouldn't narrow down it to automation. I would rather treat it as a spectrum where there are different types of solutions for different problems. And the most important thing is to look at problems that we have that we can solve using intelligence or just software and data in general, and solve those rather than adopt things for experimentation's sake, or for just because there is a shiny tool, because that's to the point of I didn't quite remember the name of the previous guest, but to his point, yes. I mean, there's different, again, incentives. Sometimes you're just incentivized to report how much of an AI company you are. Often our clients are companies who announced 2 years ago, like, now we've got whatever GPT and we've got so much AI going on, but the truth is, no one's using that. I mean, any company that had like a rollout of Microsoft Copilot or stuff like that knows that no one's really using this stuff, right? And so, or Salesforce's equivalent, and so on, right? And so everyone started going back to the drawing board. Okay, why are people not using it? And that is the very important element. So, a lot of hype, a lot of trying to pose as, okay, we are an AI powered company, but the truth is that as much as leaders want AI, because again, that's how we outcompete. That's how what allows us our companies to grow. Our people don't really want it, right? And there's always a percentage of people who are sort of unsure about it and but would want to learn. But I think there's even a higher percentage of people right now who don't necessarily even want to learn or use it. They don't trust it. They don't want it. They don't think it's right. They should be doing their thinking. Why did they go to school to, you know? And so that navigating that and the cultural aspect of it is sort of like a bigger challenge. So to see this all work, kind of like the technical side, so like automation, tooling, and
Yeah.
stuff like that is just like one part. It's actually quite quick to see results with that. But in order to fully build it into our organizations and have, our organizations become sort of AI native, AI first, we also need to get buy-in from our people, right? And I don't know what's the situation at Microsoft and how did they choose those people, but I know that I am personally guilty of realizing after 2-3 years of trying that some people simply will not open to AI. So it's not just that they are outperformed by, suddenly you don't need them. Because I think a company like Microsoft is growing probably, I mean, I don't know the situation there on the inside. They're probably growing fast enough to reassign people. But my suspicion is that if you have an internal agenda to become an AI powered company and you realize that this is the future period in the business you're in, they're in tech, right? There is oh, a, a percentage of people who we can think of them as like organic minded or so, who will just not accept working with AI. They will actually sabotage our businesses. And so I've let go of over 20% of my team eventually after 2 months, 2 years of trying and really throwing everything, trying to, sort of awaken. We've literally built a framework, that I published my first book on to awaken everyone to this, to innovate and to embrace AI and to become a part of those people who truly drive with it. But some will just won't. It's an internal conflict. I think it's like a value-based conflict, and we were not successful at getting everyone across. And I think maybe, I don't have like correct data, but my assumption is that maybe every company will have like 20% of people who are simply just completely not uninterested. In fact, they're so against that they're going to try to sabotage, even subconsciously, sabotage initiatives to bring in AI. And so I think that the changes in personal, as companies realize that, are going to be quite common. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those people are now replaced by AI. I think it's more so our workforce who use AI is, as a whole, more productive. So let's say we can keep the same amount of people, but we can do 150% or twice more if you're a smaller organization. We can get there, and I think that's very available. And of course, if you can't grow in the market, if you can't increase your revenues, or what would that be? Then what you can then you can lower the amount of the headcount that you've got. But I don't know. I would imagine that it's not Microsoft's problem. Only who
Yeah.
knows?
Indeed. Now, I gotta maybe mix two things together, but I believe they are related. So,
Yeah.
this, all what we've seen in let's say 2 years now, or 2 years and a half since ChatGPT came out. So we've seen this, initiatives that are coming actually from up in the big companies, like on board levels. We need to be an AI first company, right? And they go and tell, whoever is responsible for the technology, go and figure it out. This reminds me of what we still till today we call it digital transformation. So it's kind of
Yes.
another transformation that's happening. Now I
Totally.
know they have done some work also on that, and you have a, let's say, 1 hour per week transformation. It's like a thing that you say. Now, if I want to compare the era where the digital transformation concepts start to come, like let's digitize everything, put it there. and actually people start to struggle. Of course, we know how, like they didn't know how to digitize the processes and so on. So now we have also the AI part of it. How much similarity is there, and things in common you see in these two transformation, Matt? But at the same time, what do you think the blind spots that people have in both situations to implement real transformation, not just to say, hey, we're doing this transformation, we're shifting to AI first. From your experience, what you can share about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I've spent a lot of time diving into it, and in fact, I spent like a year asking people, over 200 different executives, leaders, and so on, whether to call this digital transformation or something else. A lot of people like to call it AI transformation now, and so on. And you know what? I've concluded that AI transformation is too thin because it focuses on technology only. And if we focus on technology only, let's sort of strap AI onto our organization and hope for the best. That doesn't work. Right? Like in the last 2-3 years, I think a lot of organizations noticed that like they've had some really interesting, shiny AI initiatives that just didn't bring much ROI. Again, going back to the results. And so we've dug into this, and high level, my view is such. We've got three major sort of waves of digital transformation. The first one was like from analog to computer, right? The second one was from just computers to networks, right? And the third one is from networks to intelligence. And each of those was like 2-3 decades, right? And the current one, I do believe, actually will take us to 3 decades, right? So it's not like we'll have AGI. We perhaps already have AGI, but it will not be so immediate to see the effect in the world. In isolated cases, of course, there will be companies that fully outcompete with tiny teams, and there will be those who adopt faster than others and wipe out entire markets from from incumbent players that are willing to change. But as a whole, globally, things will take some time. And so I actually got from that research, I got to fully believe that what we are doing now is essentially what we call next-gen digital transformation. And I like this term. It didn't come from us. It came from our friends at IDEO originally, when we discussed this about 2 years ago. And then we've kind of poked around it, tried to understand, what is the best term that would sort of make everyone feel like they get it, like they understand what will be needed in order to achieve results. And so we've settled on next gen digital transformation. This is what we do, and that has sort of three components. And if you order them by like time to value, like what is the quickest to see results on its own, then AI intelligence is the fastest, right? You can see results within days, really, if you implement something. But for that to happen, you need to sort of have like a ready infrastructure and so on. So then there is a middle layer, which we call software and data, which is something that came sort of with the previous wave, right? And that's essentially the everything that operationalizes our companies, ERPs and CRMs and tools and the cloud stuff and so on. And then we have people. And now the software and data takes like maybe 2 years to really upgrade it, right? Well, sometimes it could take less if you're able to move fast. But let's say it takes 2 years to really get to a place where you've got like clean data lake houses, you've got data sort of flowing out of silos, you've got an interoperable, composable. It's a CTO show, right? So I'll be using some of those terms. But you've got you've got essentially an application ecosystem that allows you to swap components, move them around, and build this sort of flexible fabric, where data can freely travel and become accessible to AI and connect how people work and what AI augments or solves, or again, going back to automations, simply automates and then no people are needed to actually do it anymore. And so the software and data component is still incredibly important, what we've noticed, a lot of companies are simply not ready because they're locked into some, CRM on or ERP. I'm not going to name them, but everyone knows the big ones, and they're again going back to incentives. Their biggest incentive is to lock us in for many years, keep everything in there, become database or system of record, and not let us look elsewhere. While their AI efforts are typically like an acquisition or acquisitions of some third-party AI systems that are not really well integrated and don't really bring much value. And so to solve that, we ideally want to spend time to free all of that data up, making sure that we have it in some sort of data lakehouse, somewhere where it can be accessed well by AI, and that's where we are starting to see a lot of value. And the third component that I mentioned briefly is people, right? And every company is essentially made out of people, right? Still. And I would say that very few will be able to be fully automated, right? And so we want the people to sort of be open to this change and welcome AI and co-work with AI and become augmented. And then you can start seeing each of those people suddenly, deliver 10 times more, even more, right? And we already are seeing that with many people currently. There is like, if you compare one person to another, suddenly one person is has a 5 times higher output than the next one, just because they use certain tools and approaches, and they're kind of bought into that. But for that, we need culture change, and culture change can take 3 to 7 years, let's say, at the company, right? If you have not started yet, if you don't have like an ongoing focused efforts to make your workforce fully AI powered and AI friendly, let's call it, they will take their time. Let's assume 5 years. And so it's so important to start basically ASAP. If you haven't started, start tomorrow and start leading in that direction. Because again, AI can take few days to value. Software and data resolving that application ecosystem can take a couple of years, but people will take their time. And we don't want to, Microsoft fired 3% of their people, not 97, and we don't want to be replacing everyone or using such drastic methods, because in the end they have the expertise and they are the kind of core fabric of our organizations.
Yeah. This brings me to ask you about the book, actually, Matt, because I
Yeah.
think the book title is 100x, right?
Yeah.
And it's for executives. It's called the executive. I mean, the subtitle is an executive brief for an AI-driven business results, and you just like did. So what executives can I mean, of course, you will not say what's inside the book in details, but what they can expect, like what kind of lessons they or, like, let's say, motivations they can get from your book.
Sure. So I wrote a book last year, or published a book last year that I spent a couple of years writing before that, which is a kind of like a step-by-step guide how to awaken our people and how to get a lot of ideas to implement AI, and step by step, kind of in an exponential fashion, we're getting our organization to become AI first. But that book is quite thick. It's very detailed. It gives sort of like a step by step playbook with what to avoid, how to solve issues along the way, and so on. I noticed that it's quite a read. And as much as it's adopted now by hundreds of companies, and hearing great things actually about the implementation, I really wanted to, just as I was finishing that book, I really wanted to create a different one that's just very short, very pointed, and can sort of help executives create a vision to drive this practice. So it's less methodical, it's less of a practical guide, but it's more so going over key concepts and elements that would allow us to sort of shape this AI first organization, right? And help even shape our strategy. And that, again, comes from my conversations over the course of over 2 years with 200 plus executives, leaders, consultants, AI experts from the largest companies and down to some really fast growing, exciting startups. And and a bunch of other material. And originally, this was, I think, the material for this book was around 600 pages, and we've spent about half a year crunching and removing and compressing and organizing until I got to where I wanted to, which is around 200 pages. It's short. When you get this book, you're like, okay, that's, it's fairly thin, and that was my whole dream, to make a book that's very thin but highly information packed, so that kind of like out of every line you get some value. And it was not easy to get there, but basically it takes us through 10 chapters that cover sort of what I just talked about, but in much more detail and nuance. Give some examples, many examples pulled out of the sort of 150 case studies that we're aware of, that we've studied, um, and out of around 500 that we've looked at, but around 150 we've studied deeper, or were our own, and we've and it essentially kind of covers all areas from like people, culture, technology, AI itself, agents, talks about, actually demystifies agents a lot, where we are with them, and where are we headed, and then talks about ethics, often overlooked, but incredibly important if we want to buy in from people. And again, that's the biggest limiting factor to actually for us to become an AI first organization. And it sort of concludes with a kind of like a plan and a playbook, how to put it all together, and how to start, how to get going.
Cool. Matt, I want to ask you something. Of course, like you've done it, as I say, all, and you've been in this startup, you've been like an entrepreneur yourself. Maybe so people will say, yeah, Matt has been in this world all his career, right? So he started his first business, you were 19. Now, how we can as companies, do this? And the reason I'm asking you, because when we talk innovation, and I'm a little bit biased here by, the book Innovation Dilemma, right? So
Yeah.
it looks like, at some stage, especially when we become like a large enterprise. So I can understand this. First, I was getting angry, but I understand. Like, so the bureaucracy is the destiny of large corporations, and this is
Yeah.
why things slows. But now, how do you think, or like make, what's your expectations, these companies that are started now, right? And they've been built or actually on AI technologies. How do you expect them to keep innovating moving forward? Are their destiny to stay like in innovating all the time by keeping maybe their teams smaller, or there is no escape? At some stage they're gonna become very
Mm.
big, and the innovation will slow down because of all the reasons we know.
I think there is like a sort of arbitrage opportunity in terms of outputs per person in short, medium term. So let's say there are several years where we see a huge gap between individuals, a person that uses AI and uses it every day versus not. Then next level would be a person that uses AI that is purpose fit within their organization for how they function, that like multiplies that effort much more. And then entire organization using AI versus one that doesn't. I think there will be a huge difference. I mean, the literal 100x, right? Is possible in terms of how much they can cut their costs, how much they can grow within markets, how many customers they can reach, and so on, right? And we can see that with a lot of the new kind of AI startups, which have teams of like 15 people and generate 200 million ARR, right? And there are more and more of them all the time. And in fact, the percentage of startups that become unicorn is the highest now than it's been, despite the markets, right? And I think that will probably, I mean, no one knows the future, because there might be some interesting curveballs thrown at us, but just the fact of sort of ASI super intelligence coming to play, and that is very conducive to consolidation in the market. Like, it is possible that a company like OpenAI could suddenly be able to do everything, right? and acquire everyone else that stands in their way. Like, it's totally possible, right? End of competition. But within the realm of our current economy and how things are, I think the arbitrage ends when everyone catches up, right? And so and I think either they catch up or they die. That's just how it is right now. Like, if the company is not already embracing those technologies, if their teams are not becoming AI augmented, they will go out of business. There's no other way, right? Like all the companies that went out of business when they didn't embrace electricity, or they couldn't because their markets just got cornered by like ice trade, for example. Refrigerators came in, and we don't need ice trade, right? And so all of those companies went out of business. But my bet would be that the arbitrage is gonna lower once things sort of like stabilize more, in the sense that everyone will be AI augmented, and so there will be teams, and the teams will be still growing, but the team's output will be much higher than we have been previously, and that's between 2x to 100x and more, depending on the industry, and so we'll just see much more productivity overall. But the teams will still, I would imagine, will grow, but no one will need as many people as as in the past to achieve what was achieved in the past. I think that's pretty certain. Yeah, that's already true, right? Like, we have, I used to have 80 people at my company. Now I have 9 full time. It's a
Interesting.
it's big difference already.
Yeah, so just regarding the number of company, sorry, the company that they have less number of people. So you just gave example. I know, like, you maybe referring to some of them. So Lovable, for example, they have like, and I don't know, maybe 100 millions ARR now, and of course the Bolts, and and this is the reason I mentioned these companies, because we start to see the vibe coding movement. Of course, we see it more on X rather than LinkedIn, maybe. And with vibe coding, do you see it like something similar to what you tried to do with HustleGPT, but now on steroids? Because now it can actually
Yeah, totally.
design a fully fledged app for you. Like, because HustleGPT, I remember, people were talking about, yeah, you were just, you gave the famous prompt, like, just give me instruction, I will go and do it. Nothing illegal, and that way, I will just follow the steps
Yeah.
one by one. But now with the, tools like Replit, Bolt, and others, and Versal, so you just give the prompt and actually do the fully fledged thing for you. Do you see some similarities in this? And we might see like more people trying to do similar what you were trying to do, 2 years ago?
Yeah, well, I know personally a whole bunch of people who are actively working full conviction, and I would say very high chances of success on building this mythical $1 billion company with one person. I think that's absolutely happening. Is this going to be like prevalent in the markets? I don't know. I don't think so, because it takes a certain kind of person, and it's still much nicer to to work with people. But there are people working on this, and it's much more available than it was. However, I realized something very interesting um, when we were discussing things at Harvard Business a few weeks ago, a month ago. I looked at my post from 2 years ago, which sort of did a recap of my first initial 30-day run when I started this, this Future Works, essentially, which the name came even from AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this whole run, and documenting that process every day of how I'm building this company. Everything was vibe coded there. And that was 2 years ago, right? Everything 100% vibe coded. I didn't can't code anything. And that got, just even an app, and a web app deployed and stuff, right? And even the client work was part vibe coded, and that was the beginning of it. You could say all those tools didn't exist, and Cursor came like 3 months after or something, like the first version that we started playing with and popularized like a year and a half later. But we not much. I noticed that not that much changed. So GPT-4, when it came out, was a very strong model, and then it got like kind of dumbed down over time. And now we've got all those 50 different versions of models after that from OpenAI. Actually, they are not that much better. They still hallucinate. They still have a lot of issues, and it was just a lot of infrastructure was built around them. So now we've got these agents and applications and workflows and tools, but actually the act itself has not evolved that much. If you look at that's there's a Medium post. If you look at Matt Leta, and then on Medium there is, or just if you type like million Matt Leta Medium, you will find this recap, because it's like had like a $1.8 million pipeline or something within 30 days. The findings that I shared then, I was shocked. Are findings that I would write now. And so we think that we're on this like crazy exponential, and we are to some degree. But the truth is that actually a lot of the modalities have not changed. And in fact, it was possible to vibe code then, and it is possible to vibe code now much better. There are all those, there's MCP, there are new, better approaches. You would create first documentation library, then have something like cursors or V0 work with these materials to code, and you end up with results. And the results are better. And back then it was like copy pasting. There was no IDE that had that could do this, and you would just approve changes. Right now the laugh is that you just like vibe coding is just like you press command enter all the time, control enter, and but and prompt, right? But I think a lot of people right now are kind of, haha, vibe coding is like, what is this? That's not gonna get there. Look at this code, it's garbled and not accessible, and whatever would be the argument of those people that kind of want to imagine a reality where AI is not actually taking over everything, right? But that's not where we're going, right? Like if you just look at where things are going, this is not where we're going. But it's like a reaction, again, going like from value misalignment. It is, coming from people who have been developers, let's say, for a few years. They're like, aha, it doesn't produce good code, right? But it's the same haha that we had last year, where people were like, oh, look how many fingers there are on this image, right? Everyone was counting fingers on images. It's like, oh, this is AI generated. It has 6 fingers or whatever. The hands are a bit off. But then a year later, a lot of Main Street advertising, video, and stuff like that is made by AI. There are 5 fingers, and there will never be a return of multiple fingers. Right? The problem has been solved. We don't realize that this content is generated by AI anymore. It's just too good. It's real. It's just as good as photography or design or whatever. And if it's prompted well and if it's done well, right? And it's the same with coding, in my opinion, and the same with a lot of other things. Where like it's easy to go to like, haha, this does not, this is not as good as a good developer, but give it a year, and it will be, and then it will be much better than any developer. O3, ChatGPT's O3 already crossed, Norwegian Mensa, I think crossed 130. It's basically smarter than the vast majority of people. And that's within 1 year. I think last year we were at 70 or something, and now we're at 130. And of course, there's a lot of optimization just to pass those tests better, rather than actually deliver better value. But I think, if you give it another year, we'll also be much further. It will be smarter than basically anyone alive, and so on. And so it's really good not to get trapped in the haha when looking at vibe coding, but rather learn it and learn it fast to be relevant in the market.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just a note, and this is not my own thought, regarding, because I have the same experience about the models, that after a while I call them, they got lazy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember the first, the ChatGPT 3.5. After like maybe using it for 2 3 months, and by the time before the 4 came, I felt like, yeah, it's not, it doesn't want to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Triple five
It's
was
lazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and same start to happen with the different 4 versions, because OpenAI keep, making us guess, is it 4.0, is it 4.5? And
Yeah.
anyway, I saw like the same behavior. I didn't see it much in Claude or the others, but even so, someone told me, yeah, they OpenAI, they do this on purpose. Now, is it true? No, I don't know. So they said because they want to manipulate people and they want to show that the new model is
That
now,
there is progress. Yeah.
yeah, there's their
It's
progress. I'm not sure.
yeah.
What I like, for example, and I figured out that so far it's behaving good. So the other models, of course, still I use on daily basis ChatGPT, like because the good thing, it has a lot of information about me. So this makes it
Mm.
even when I ask for like
Mm-hmm.
some proofreading, based on my the way I write usually. Of course, I'm not native English speaker, so I need it helps me in fixing my writings. So still good. But in terms of reasoning, and I've been interacting with it long time, I'm impressed by Grok, honestly. I'm impressed by also Claude, because Claude, especially if you have like a very, I would say, complex task, it surprises me every time.
Yeah.
Even because I know people use it for coding, I use it for other use cases, still also very good. So, but anyway, so moving forward, Matt, if we want to like look into the future, you kept mentioning about the 1%, $1 billion company, and we discussed a lot. How far are we from that, and how are we gonna make business in this case? Like, if are we going to be like one person businesses interacting with each others, or like is it the AI that gonna talk, and you and me, we're gonna be maybe on a nice beach in some tropical islands, and the AI will handle the day-to-day operation, will report to us? How do you envision the future?
I think the so what when I had my previous company, we were spending a lot of time predicting trends. We've analyzed reports. We had an AI system, in fact, that crunched like petabytes. That's like something we built for a client, but we had access to it. That was used by BlackRock and other companies to predict
Mm-hmm.
trends. And I write about that in my books as well. Eventually, when markets started shifting and we've started seeing the change that's coming out of AI in various ways, we concluded that we cannot predict the future. So I'll just say that first, that our current approach is not to only observe mega fundamental trends such as demographics or compute, the increase of compute, the double exponential, as people call it, around compute, but not really predict what will happen, but rather becoming highly adaptable to whatever happens, because we have very large sort of chaos introducing factors right now. One is climate, which we don't like to talk about, but it's present and it's there. It's a real thing. And artificial intelligence, of course, technology as a whole. So between the two, they're kind of like, some people call them two super cycles. There is a lot of change, right? And the change cannot be predicted, I think, by anyone, basically, whatever they claim, you know. But we can prepare and we can make some certain bets against that, right? And so the short answer is that I don't really know what the companies of the future will look like, but we can already observe that a lot of companies are sort of getting stuck in a loop of like, we need to start, we don't start, we need to start, we don't start, we need to, and they're losing very, very, very precious time against those who are adopting AI and building it in. And we, for example, work with large real estate companies a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and we see gigantic difference, gigantic difference in terms of what one can do versus another. And that's in a very slow moving industry, you would think. But we see incredibly huge difference between like one company we've been working with for, I think, 2.5, 3 years now, helping them. They're so far ahead of other companies we're talking to that I don't see how they're not going to, outcompete them on a very large scale. And that's multi-billion-dollar companies. I think this technology will really favor those who move and adapt, especially because of like this culture change and learning from mistakes, just being able to track. And so the important thing I think is to become highly adaptable, and to become highly adaptable to embrace something like the leap. We literally created this framework for that, and be able to start moving and engage our teams in this like ongoing sort of innovation with AI practice across the entire fabric of the company. I'm not so focused on the billion-dollar startups. I think there will be some already this year, maybe, but it's the valuation of startups. It's all paper money, right? It's the people, we get excited for unicorns, but it's not real value. I mean, I have many friends, including my own projects, that were worth, millions, tens of millions, even billions of dollars. I have a dear friend whose company was worth $4.6 billion, and it got sold for parts, when something went wrong in the market. And then, and those things, those fortunes change very fast, right? And so valuations are tricky, but I do think that this year we'll probably start seeing, this actually come to fruition. And so, like in any business, I think it's a function of leverage. Like if you are able to build enough kind of orchestration layer around yourself using various AI systems, and use AI to help manage AI let's say, just in a simplified form, then you will get there. I mean, you can get there. It's not a problem. If you have a business that doesn't require you making deals in person, because of course that's then impossible. But if it's a digital product or something like that, then you can get there, and I think that's going to happen this year. But I personally don't think that this will have a big impact on the market overall. I don't think those companies will outcompete other companies in that space. Not to use dirty examples, but the company that has the highest revenue per employee right now, I think, is OnlyFans. And Pornhub still goes strong, right? It's not, they're not necessarily going to to change the entire the entire market, in my opinion. But and to that degree, we will still work with other people and not companies. There's an important aspect that's often overlooked as well, which is we like to work with people, right? And even Gen Z, when you look at trends, they actually want to be in office now, right? And the millennials that I'm guilty of, I've been nomadic or moving around the world for 2 decades now, and purely nomadic for 3 years, just traveling around the world, right? And I think people actually want to be with other people, right? And when I started FutureWorks, in the first month, it was just me and AI as my partner, and it felt lonely. I didn't enjoy this. Like I didn't just like, okay, I'm talking to a system, and so I think we're not necessarily going to be just a bunch of people who are like solitary beings with. Yeah, I think that favors a certain kind of person who can put up with it. That typically is quite angry with people, as far as I know. Some people working on this, and then not everyone is like that. Like few people are like that. Yeah.
Super cool. Great. So thank you again, Matt, for this great episode, the great conversation today, and I really appreciate it. So this is for the audience. This is how I end my episodes, guys. If you just find out about this podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give me a favor, subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, I really thank you very, very, very much. You are doing great things for the show this year. You're like making us being selected on different platforms as one of the best podcasts. You're getting us ranked on the top 200 charts of the Apple podcasts in different countries. simultaneously. I really appreciate this. This is not me. It's because of my guests and because of my also audience as well. So thank you very, very much. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.